So the first is about the loading of the libraries. The tall chart requires to have the D3V4. So previously I was already using this D3V4. It's just that I used a new setting specified by tall chat, so that I'm using the most recent version of D3V4. So in addition to it, so there are two additional links. The first is the style sheet. The other is the tall chart, the tall charts JavaScript. So I also noticed the one thing is that, so remember I have this JavaScript, this one for taking multiple attributes to setting multiple attributes. For example, when setting the styles, we can list the multiple styles in the same field and name it styles instead of having the individual styles. So that is going to need this library, but it's very important that it has to be loaded after loading the D3V4. So otherwise, it will be overwritten by the D3V4, and that multiple attributes cannot be set. Anyway, so this is the loading the data. The other is that I am going to create a few boxes to hold these charts. So actually, the store charts, I like it because it's very straightforward. So basically it says that, well, you're gonna have a new instance of this and do a couple of, I think it's called the decoration, and basically it is to set values for the parameters. And then you're gonna render that to a component with the ID of whatever you decide here. So basically, it means that well, you're gonna define a box, and you assign an ID to that box, and later you can insert the bar charts or whatever the charts inside that box. So that makes the chart making very handy. So we're gonna start first with adding this boxes. So basically what I did here is that I'm gonna have a big box for all the charts, and within this big box I'm gonna have a couple of smaller containers. So each for a section of the charts. Actually I have two boxes for each section. So the first I have a container, and then inside I'm gonna have this chart container with the ID specified, so as to inject these charts. So why I have to have two boxes here? This is because let's check this. So I am going to have this box, and I'm gonna have an ID called the CN Hubei, right? So with this chart, so within this box, the top charts we're gonna take over from there, and it is gonna add a bunch of components to hold these bar charts. But the problem is that remember that I want to show that over the timeline. So I'm not gonna only draw these charts for once. So as long as the time changed, I'm gonna rebuild this charts again, and I'm gonna run that tall charts. And the tall charts program, basically what it does is that it is not going to overwrite the existing components. instead it's going to add more charts down below. So eventually, so if I have multiple time points, and each time I run that program, it is going to create a new bar chart, and it's going to go down the way. There are a long list of that, which is quite annoying. So the idea I have is that every time I'm going to, before I make a 12 chart, I'm going to delete the box with the specified ID. And then I'm going to create again. So in that case, there will be no tall chart built-in components inside. Then in that case, so each time it will be only one chart in that area. And for that reason, I want to hold that place. That place is not going to be changed relative to other components. So I have a box outside here. That's for this purpose that I have two boxes. One is just holding the place, and the other is to have that specific chart for a specific container for the chart. So the code for the chart building is all here. It is in it is in the add DOM part. So it's quite boring, so I'm not gonna go through that. So I had a learning here is that these charts, because sometimes they're gonna be more places, and at the beginning there are fewer places. So the height of this box is going to change. And this is one thing. The second is that it is quite annoying and difficult to prevent those DIVs from overlapping with each other. And the trick is that you don't set the height of the DIV and let it determined automatically. So as long as the height of the container is determined dynamically, all of these containers will be okay. They won't be overlapping with each other. So when you start to have a fixed height, and if it is not set correctly, then it will start to have this overlapping. So the learning I have here is that let the programs to decide the height by itself. So the next is to deal with the data. So previously I've talked about getting the most recent data. For example, there are many time points, but for Hubei, for example, we're going to have the most recent recent data, most recent reported data. So next, we're going to treat this data in this way. The first is that we're going to have all the cases of Hubei, including the confirmed cases and the death cases. We're going to put them separately as one data set. And the next is that we are going to have the rest of the provinces within the mainland China, and we're going to put them together. So the above two, the Hubei and the other provinces, these are based on the provinces within mainland China. So for the rest of the places and areas, we're going to summarize that by country or by the special regions like Hong Kong, Taiwan, Macau, those kind of places. So then when we are summarizing that by country or region, we are also going to summarize the mainland China. All right, so now we have within the mainland China, we have the breakdown by different provinces. And for the rest of the places, we have the summary by the country or region. And then we're going to put mainland China and Hubei together because these numbers are big enough to be put together, uh, and it's going to save space, right? And it makes sense because in China, the main problem seems to be in Hubei. So the rest of the provinces in China, we're going to put them together, and then the rest of the places outside main China, we're going to be placed in the same chart. So this is the requirement for the tall chart, and basically it is a collection or an array with a lot of pieces of objects, each with multiple properties. Um, so in our case, the properties will be like country or regions, then cities or provinces, and then the categories. For example, the confirmed cases or death cases, and the counting, which is the number of cases. So to prepare these the different data for for the different parts of the chart, as I said, the first is that I'm gonna separate the data of Hubei. So the first is that I'm gonna transpose the data structure a little bit. Originally, I have the confirmed cases and death cases in the same row, and now I'm gonna put that into different rows, and we're gonna change the number of cases to the name called count, and I'm gonna add a category to indicate whether it is a confirmed or death case. So now, so the different categories are in one column with confirmed or death, and the number of cases are in separate rows. So with that, I took out the Hubei cases. And then for the other places, I'm gonna put them together. And I noticed that I should be very careful because in the earlier report, so there are cases like Hubei is gonna have a name called China instead of mainland China. So, but for the most recent data, like up to now, there is no such problem. Well, again, so the data from John Hopkins John Hopkins University is already good enough, but yet it needs further cleaning, and they should be very careful. So like recently I noticed that in the report like by today, which is January the 31st, so there are two cases in Russia, so they're put together, but actually they belong to, so these two cases were recorded in very different geographic locations. One is in Siberia near Mongolia, the other is to the far west. So these two places are totally different. We have to be careful in cleaning up these data. So actually, so carry on with this data cleaning. We have Hubei, we separated Hubei from the other provinces. And now we're gonna have all the other provinces within mainland China. And actually that part are prepared first. So actually in this chart, the second bar chart is going to be plotted first. So all of these charts are basically, these are horizontal stacked bars. We're going to use this macro called H bar. The function was put in this macro.js, and it's quite straightforward. I mean, I've tested a lot of different settings introduced by this website. Some are working, the others are not. So I'm not very impressed with their documentation. It sounds lots of functions are not achieved, or it does not work at all. But yet it is still the most convenient way to configure and render the chart. So notice that in the beginning I removed the whole box, and then I'm gonna add the contents within this box. So this is the first thing. The second is that I have to customize. This is basically, these are hard codings to change the default color of the bars, and also to get rid of those annoying like labels for X and Y axis, which is totally redundant in this case. Well, I also took a lot of time trying to figure out the right way to handle these labels. But actually, I still haven't done a good job. These labels sounds very, very strange, especially when I scroll to the end with a lot of cases. Then you can see that they tends to squeeze together. So I still cannot find a way. But I have an additional benefit from using this tall charts is that it provides this tips. You know, when you hit on it, when you hover the mouse is over on it, you can see these numbers. So even without these labels, it is still going to be okay. Okay, so that part is about the function to build the chart. So let's just carry on and talk about the rest of the data handling. So after splitting, after getting the province-based data, and for the rest of the data, and actually for everything, I'm gonna sum it up by region. So the problem here is that I'm gonna sum that by two properties. One is the region, which is like the countries, the areas. The other is by the data category, which is whether it is confirmed or death. So I tested one way, which is online. There is there is a suggestion of how to do it using the reduced method, but I didn't find the right answers. That one is actually going to cause error. So it ended up that I used the dumbest way, that I'm gonna separately summarize the cases by confirmed and the death cases. And once I've summarized that by different data category, and I merged them together back into one data set, and that's how I did it. I know it's quite dumb, but well, I'll just leave it there. So now with this summarization, the summaries by regions, now I have the summary of the mainland China. So the next is that I'm gonna put the mainland China and the Hubei figures together to be plotted in this first chart. And lastly, we're gonna have a data set of other places outside of mainland China, and then we're gonna plot that in the third section of the charts, or the third chart. Yeah, why I have to say the third section of chart. That sounds strange, but anyway. So I also rearranged this part. I took out the YouTube video. Now with all of these functions, I think it is quite straightforward. I don't need to have a video to tell the viewers how to view these results. It sounds like all these parts are gonna be self-explaining. So instead, I have big and striking numbers of the confirmed cases and the death. So it's like the same trick. I'm gonna have a predefined box here, and then inside I'm gonna inject the numbers according to the updated data. I'm gonna have the summarized number of cases and put it here. For the display of the found families, I also loaded to Google found families. So apart from that, there are two small tricks here. The first is that I'm gonna so check about this label of the handler. So so when the handle is on the left side, so it's better to have the label aligned to left, so that it won't be covered here. So when it moves to the right, it's better to let it get right aligned, so that it won't exceed the bar area. So this is actually very simple. So the change, or whether it is playing or drag, the handler, it is going to trigger. So each time it is going to trigger this function called slide update. And inside I have a check of the current value, which is the distance between the handler to the starting point, the current value, to the target value, which is the total length of this line. So if it is greater than half of that distance, or of the ratio, then I'm gonna let the hand label to be right aligned, or aligned to the end. All right. So otherwise, if it is less than half, then I'm gonna let it align to the start point, or left aligned. So the other thing is that I found a bug here, is that when I'm playing and it goes well at first, but when it reaches the point, some point here, is gonna stop there instead of going to the very end. And the problem of that is because in the function we've set that each time it's gonna add the distance, it's gonna travel more distance according to the setting here. There is a problem that for the last step, it might jump for the length of the step setting, but in that case it will be greater than the current value will be greater than the target value. So in that case, according to the original setting, it says that, well, if this current value adding a step is going to be greater than the target value, it will stop there. So that's why it's going to spot there, because if we are going to add another value, then it's going to exceed the length of the whole timeline. So, but that is not correct. So to correct that, so I've changed that, and now I have the distance between the current value and the target. So when the current value is not the whole length of the target, then it's always smaller than the target, right? So, but for the last step, even if it is going to be larger than the target, their distance will still be less than the step itself, right? So basically what I'm saying here is that it is allowed for the last step that you can be a little bit slide over the whole target length period. But however, that should be fewer than one step. So you can only go for the last step, but for the next step, you cannot go further. So that's how I solve this problem. So anyway, now I have these bar charts by different places, and it's gonna dynamically change. Watch this. It's gonna dynamically change over time. So yeah, check it out. It's gonna dynamically change.